Hey everyone, I'm pretty sure that when you think about the Egyptian pyramids, two images immediately pop into your head. The first one is straight out of a Hollywood epic, like the Ten Commandments. Thousands of emaciated, shackled slaves under a scorching sun dragging stones, with overseers cracking whips. The second picture, the one pushed by the pseudo-archaeologists, features aliens, lasers, and lost technology. Well, guess what? I've got news for you. Both of those stories are complete and utter nonsense. And the actual truth, the one that history has supposedly covered up, is 100 times cooler than any sci-fi flick, because it's a story about human genius. Today, we're going to dig into who really raised this colossal structure. A structure that stood as the world's tallest building for 4,000 years. Ready for the full debunking? Let's go. Why Hollywood is lying and aliens had nothing to do with it. The slave myth, 2,000 years of distortion. Let's start with the slaves. Where did this idea even come from? It wasn't invented by Steven Spielberg. The real culprits, essentially, were ancient Greek tourists. The first person to spread the rumor that 100,000 slaves built the pyramids was the historian Herodotus. The problem is that Herodotus visited Egypt 2,000 years after the Great Pyramid of Khufu was finished. That's like interviewing random people today about how the ancient kingdom of Rus was built. The Judeo-Christian tradition piled onto this rumor, popularizing the idea of enslavement in Egypt, even though Giza specifically isn't mentioned in the Bible. And Hollywood naturally turned this confusion into a blockbuster. Drama, oppression, conflict, the perfect plot. But serious archaeology? It just laughs at this storyline. Aliens. An insult masquerading as a compliment. Now for the aliens. Proponents of this theory say, how could they build such a marvel in just 26 years when all they had were copper tools? You know what science says to that? It says that by claiming this, you are essentially insulting the ancient Egyptians. You're basically saying your achievement is so unbelievable that we don't believe you, as primitive people, could have pulled it off yourselves. Someone more advanced must have helped. That's rubbish, because we can track the entire evolution of Egyptian construction. First, there was the step pyramid of Djoser. Then the failed attempts by Khufu's father, Sneferu. Remember his bent pyramid? Khufu simply took all that accumulated experience, hired the best experts, and saw the project through to perfection. No magic, just lessons learned over a century. Archaeological detective work, the shocking discoveries. The truly fascinating stuff started in the 1990s when archaeologists Zahi Hawass and Mark Lehner discovered something incredible. The workers' town, or Hayt el Ghurab, and right next to it, a workers' cemetery. This was a genuine gold mine for busting myths. Stakes and sick days, VIP labor. If you're a slave, you're fed enough to keep you alive and nothing more. But look at what they found in the workers' town. The diet. A huge number of bones from cattle, sheep, and pigs. Analysis showed that the workers regularly received high-quality meat, the best cuts of beef. Do you seriously think a pharaoh who was whipping slaves would feed them steaks like Olympic athletes? Number. The state was investing in a strong, healthy, valuable workforce. Healthcare. The skeletons of the workers, who, by the way, were Egyptians, died young due to heavy labor, 30 to 35 years. Yet, the bones show signs of complex fractures, from falling stones that had healed correctly. This means they received expensive, advanced medical care. Splints were applied, and they were observed for long periods. A slave's life wouldn't warrant that kind of investment. Burials of honor and the friends of Khufu. Here comes the major plot twist: honored tombs. The workers were buried in modest mastabas, tombs, right next to the sacred pyramids. In ancient Egypt, being buried next to the pharaoh was the highest honor, guaranteeing proximity to the god-king in the afterlife. Slaves, who were considered mere property, would never have been buried this way. Corporate pride. In the service chambers of the Great Pyramid of Khufu itself, archaeologists found graffiti left by the work crews. They proudly signed their blocks with names like the Friends of Khufu or the Drunkards of Menkaure. Seriously, would you call yourself a friend of someone who's whipping your back? Number. This speaks to camaraderie, pride, and a national project. The true genius, logistics and management. If they weren't slaves, why did they work so hard? The answer is labor duty, corvée. When the Nile flooded, the fields were submerged and the farmers were out of work. The state mobilized this army of workers for 3 to 4 months out of the year. This wasn't slave labor. It was an obligatory civil duty, a kind of tax paid not in money, but in labor for the benefit of the state and the deified king. The star architect, Hemiunu. Every mega project needs a top manager. Here, it was Hemiunu. He was Khufu's vizier, his nephew, and held the official title, overseer of all construction projects of the king. Hemiunu wasn't a magician. He was a member of the royal family who managed the most centralized economy in the history of the Old Kingdom. Logistics. How do you deliver 2.6 million blocks? The main challenge wasn't lifting them, it was getting them there. Merer's Diary, the 2013 sensation. The oldest papyri in the world were found, the logistics journal of an official named Merer. In these work rosters, he detailed how his team of barges transported the white limestone for the casing from the Tura quarries right to Giza via a system of canals connected to the Nile. Water and sledges. The blocks themselves were moved on wooden sledges. How did they reduce friction? They poured water onto the sand. The wet sand surface becomes stiff, allowing the sledges to glide much easier than on dry sand. The internal ramp. The stones were lifted using ramps, levers, and ropes. A modern theory, proposed by architect Jean-Pierre Houdin, suggests that the external ramp was used only for the lower levels. Higher up, the Egyptians used an internal, spiral ramp that ascended inside the pyramid itself. Genius? Yes. Alien? Definitely not. The true legacy. So, what was the biggest cover-up? It wasn't golden treasure or secret technology. The cover-up was the human capacity for organization. As Egyptologist Mark Lehner put it, I don't think about how the Egyptians built the pyramid, but how the pyramids built Egypt. Khufu's project was an economic engine. It created a unified national infrastructure, a bureaucracy, a logistical network, and strengthened central power, making the Old Kingdom the first true superpower. The pyramids are a monument not to slavery, but to the triumph of management, bureaucracy, and national pride. So next time you see a pyramid, forget the whips and the flying saucers. Think about the citizens who proudly called themselves the Friends of Khufu, about Hemiunu, who made the logistics work, and about the fact that even 4,600 years ago, people, working together, could achieve the literally impossible. That is the real story of ancient Egypt. Hope you enjoyed this investigation. Hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.